There are moments in life when intuition speaks before logic does. A quiet tightening in the chest, a pause that feels heavier than it should, an inner voice that whispers, "Pay attention." Many dismiss this voice. They call it overthinking, but history, psychology, and lived experience tell us otherwise. Those who feel chosen, not superior, but called, often encounter the same test. A man who appears helpful, charming, even divinely timed, yet carries a hidden shadow. This is not superstition. This is about patterns of the human psyche. If you are sensitive, purposeful, or driven by meaning, you will attract guides and counterfeit guides. Tonight we explore the warning signs, not to instill fear, but to sharpen discernment. Not every threat shows up looking dangerous. Some walk into your life glowing. They speak softly. They smile easily. They say the right things at the right time. They feel safe. They feel familiar. They feel like relief. That is how the mask works. Darkness rarely announces itself. It studies you first. It learns what you admire. It listens to what you respect. Then it puts on the costume of light and waits for you to trust it. This man does not kick the door down. He opens it gently. He does not raise his voice. He lowers it. He does not challenge you openly. He agrees with you. He mirrors your beliefs, your struggles, your hopes. You talk about purpose and he nods. You talk about pain and he understands. You talk about faith and he speaks your language fluently. It feels like connection. It feels like alignment. It feels like finally being seen. But what you are really seeing is reflection, not truth. People underestimate how powerful it is to feel understood. When someone makes you feel seen, you stop asking questions. You stop checking details. You stop paying attention to your body, because being understood feels like oxygen when you have been holding your breath for years. And that is where the danger begins. Not in fear, but in comfort. Not in chaos, but in calm. The mask of light does not rush you. It waits until you relax. Psychologically, every human being has a persona, a face we show the world, a version of ourselves that functions in society. Most people know it is a mask, but some people wear it so long they forget who they are underneath. They perform goodness. They perform wisdom. They perform morality. Over time, they start believing the performance. And once a person believes their own act, they become dangerous without realizing it. This man does not think he is lying. That is what makes him convincing. He believes he is right. He believes he is chosen. He believes his intentions excuse his actions. When you question him, he does not reflect. He deflects. When you disagree, he does not listen. He explains. When you express discomfort, he reframes it as your weakness. Slowly, subtly, consistently, he positions himself as the standard of truth. At first it feels inspiring. You feel guided. You feel protected. You feel like someone strong is walking beside you. But pay attention to the shift. Pay attention to when encouragement turns into control. Pay attention to when guidance turns into pressure. Pay attention to when admiration becomes obligation. That is when the mask starts slipping. People who escape these dynamics often say the same thing. They say at first it felt like a miracle. It felt like an answer. It felt like timing that was too perfect to question. They trusted the feeling more than the facts. They trusted the tone more than the pattern. They trusted the words more than the results. And by the time they realized something was wrong, they were already emotionally invested. This is how manipulation works in real life. not through force, but through familiarity, not through fear, but through favor. The man with the mask of light positions himself as necessary to your growth, necessary to your clarity, necessary to your future. You start checking with him before checking with yourself. You start doubting your instincts when they conflict with his opinions. You start shrinking to maintain the connection. Charisma is powerful, but it is not proof of truth. Presence is impressive, but it is not proof of integrity. Confidence is loud, but it is not proof of character. There are people who can move a room and still be lost inside. There are people who can quote wisdom and still avoid accountability. There are people who sound enlightened and still refuse to be examined. Light that cannot be questioned is not light. Wisdom welcomes scrutiny. Truth does not panic when challenged. Real strength invites dialogue. When someone reacts defensively to honest questions, that is information. When someone frames disagreement as betrayal, that is information. When someone demands loyalty before transparency, that is information. You do not need permission to notice patterns. The mask of light thrives when people confuse comfort with safety. Just because someone feels good does not mean they are good for you. Just because someone sounds right does not mean they live right. Just because someone understands your pain does not mean they will not use it. Awareness is not cynicism. Discernment is not negativity. It is maturity. There is a reason this man enters your life when you are searching, when you are tired, when you are hungry for meaning. The mask targets openness. It targets hope. It targets people who want more out of life. This is not an insult. It is a warning. The deeper your potential, the more carefully you must choose who you trust with it. Pay attention to how you feel after interactions. Do you feel empowered or dependent? Do you feel clearer or confused? Do you feel encouraged to think or pressure to agree? Growth expands you. Control compresses you. The mask of light does not want you strong. It wants you aligned to him. You are allowed to slow down. You are allowed to observe. You are allowed to change your mind. You do not owe access to anyone who has not earned trust through consistency. Real light does not rush intimacy. It does not demand allegiance. It does not collapse when questioned. It stands steady because it has nothing to hide. The warning is not about paranoia. It is about perception. It is about seeing beyond charm, beyond tone, beyond surface level goodness. It is about understanding that some of the most harmful influences do not look like enemies. They look like answers. And the moment you learn to tell the difference is the moment you reclaim your power. The mask of light only works when you ignore your inner signal, that quiet hesitation, that small discomfort, that moment when something does not fully add up. That is not weakness. That is awareness trying to speak. Listen to it. Honor it. Protect it. Because clarity is not loud. It is calm. And when you learn to trust it, no mask can fool you again. This man does not chase everyone. He does not waste time on the empty or the indifferent. He is drawn to depth. He notices the thinker who asks real questions. He notices the creative who sees beyond survival. He notices the believer who carries faith even when life hurts. He notices the dreamer who cannot shut off the vision inside their mind. He is attracted to potential the way fire is attracted to oxygen. Not because he wants to protect it, but because he needs it. Potential is powerful. Potential has energy. Potential has direction. And when someone has not resolved their own inner emptiness, they look for people who can fill it for them. They do not build. They borrow. They do not create. They consume. They do not grow. They feed. This man feeds on what you have not yet become. He feeds on your future while pretending to support it. At first it feels like encouragement. He sees something in you before others do. He speaks life into your ideas. He tells you that you are special, that you are different, that you have something rare, and for someone who has been overlooked or doubted or underestimated, that attention feels like water in a dry place. It feels good to finally be recognized. It feels good to finally be affirmed. But pay attention to how the affirmation works. It is never free. It always has a direction. He lifts you up just enough to keep you close. He praises you but ties the praise to himself. You are talented because he noticed. You are growing because he guided. You are succeeding because he supported. Slowly the story changes. Your potential is no longer yours. It becomes proof of his importance. Over time, something shifts inside you. You are still moving, but you feel heavier. You are still achieving, but you feel smaller. You start second-guessing yourself even as your skills increase. You feel strong in public, but weak in private. You start needing permission for decisions you once made naturally. You feel guilty for wanting more independence, guilty for wanting space, guilty for evolving. That guilt is not accidental. It is conditioning. When someone feeds on your potential, they cannot afford for you to outgrow them. So they tie growth to loyalty. They frame separation as betrayal. They make independence feel selfish. They make your expansion feel dangerous. Not to you, but to them. This is how power-based relationships operate. Control does not always look aggressive. Sometimes it looks supportive. Sometimes it looks like mentorship. Sometimes it looks like guidance. But real guidance strengthens your inner authority. False guidance replaces it. One teaches you how to stand. The other teaches you who to lean on. Psychology has studied this pattern again and again. People with high empathy are more likely to be targeted. Not because they are weak, not because they are naive, but because they care deeply. They listen fully. They give sincerely. They believe in growth and redemption. They assume others operate from the same heart space. That assumption becomes the opening. Empathetic people feel responsible for others' emotions. When this man feels threatened, he does not say it. He withdraws. He criticizes subtly. He reminds you of what he has done for you. Your empathy fills in the gaps. You adjust. You shrink. You apologize. You slow your growth to protect his comfort. And you do it without being asked directly. This is how potential gets drained, not through sabotage, but through obligation. You start carrying someone else's emotional stability while trying to build your own life. You start managing their reactions instead of focusing on your purpose. You spend more energy maintaining the relationship than pursuing the vision that once burned inside you. A true guide does not need you to stay small. A true guide celebrates when you surpass them. They do not compete with your growth. They are not threatened by your independence. They do not position themselves as the source. They point you back to yourself. They remind you of your agency. They push you forward, even if it means you no longer need them. A false guide does the opposite. They pull you into orbit. Everything revolves around their approval. Their opinion becomes the reference point. Their validation becomes the reward. You start measuring your success by how it affects them instead of how it aligns with your values. That is not mentorship. That is dependency. Look at your life honestly. Are you becoming more self-trusting or more hesitant? Are you clearer or more confused? Are you building confidence or constantly checking in? Growth should make you bolder. It should sharpen your voice. It should deepen your peace. If someone is close to you during a season of growth and you feel weaker instead of stronger, something is wrong. This man does not want your failure. He wants your partial success. Enough progress to feel important. Not enough progress to lose control. Enough light to reflect well on him. Not enough light to expose him. That is why he stays close when you doubt yourself. That is why he gets uncomfortable when you do not. Your potential was never meant to be consumed by another person's ego. It was meant to be lived. It was meant to stretch you. It was meant to outgrow rooms and relationships and identities. Anyone who benefits from you staying the same is not invested in your future. You do not need to announce your awakening. You do not need to argue your way free. Awareness alone begins the separation. When you stop feeding the dynamic, it loses power. When you stop outsourcing your confidence, it returns. When you stop carrying guilt for growth, you remember who you were before permission was required. Your depth is not a resource for someone else to mine. Your empathy is not an invitation to be managed. Your dreams are not tools for another person's significance. You were not designed to orbit another human being. You were designed to stand fully in your own becoming. When you reclaim your potential, you will feel the difference immediately. The fear fades, the guilt loosens, the energy returns, and you realize the truth that was buried all along. You were never growing because of him. You were growing despite him. Every human being carries a shadow, not a monster, not evil by default. A shadow is simply the parts of us we refuse to look at, the fears we hide, the anger we deny, the insecurity we pretend does not exist. Growth begins the moment a person turns inward and says, I need to face myself. Real strength is not loud, it is honest, and anyone who refuses that honesty will eventually project their darkness outward. This man will not face his shadow. He runs from it. He dresses it up. He spiritualizes it. He intellectualizes it. He does everything except confront it, because confronting the shadow requires humility. It requires admitting weakness. It requires responsibility, and that is the one thing he avoids at all costs. Instead of asking, what part did I play, he asks, who can I blame? Instead of saying I was wrong, he says they misunderstood me. Instead of reflecting, he reacts. Instead of growing, he hardens. The shadow grows stronger the longer it is ignored. What you avoid internally will always show up externally. You will notice his language first. He talks about enemies more than evolution. He talks about betrayal more than behavior. He talks about attacks more than accountability. His world is full of opposition because his inner world is full of denial. Anyone who challenges him becomes a threat. Anyone who questions him becomes an enemy. Anyone who disagrees becomes proof that the world is against him. This is not confidence. This is fragility pretending to be power. True confidence does not need constant defense. True wisdom does not fear examination. A grounded person can sit with discomfort without collapsing. But a person who has not faced their shadow feels exposed the moment they are questioned. So they strike first. They dominate the narrative. They control the environment. He claims moral superiority because it shields him from self-examination. If he is always right, he never has to change. If he is always chosen, he never has to reflect. If his actions are always justified, he never has to apologize. He reframes harm as necessity. He reframes control as leadership. He reframes ego as destiny. History has shown this pattern again and again. People who believed they were selected by something greater while refusing to be accountable to anything deeper. They spoke of purpose while avoiding responsibility. They demanded loyalty while rejecting feedback. They saw themselves as saviors while leaving damage behind them. When a person cannot face their own darkness, they attempt to manage it through others. They control people because they cannot control themselves. They dominate conversations because they cannot tolerate inner silence. They impose rules because they fear internal chaos. Control becomes the substitute for consciousness. You will feel this around him. There is tension. There is pressure. There is a sense of walking carefully. You choose words wisely. You hold back truth. You soften your honesty to avoid reaction. That is not respect. That is fear disguised as harmony. Real wisdom creates safety, not silence. He avoids introspection because introspection would collapse the image he has built. The mask would crack. The contradictions would surface. The unresolved pain would demand attention. So instead of turning inward, he turns outward. He corrects others. He critiques others. He disciplines others. Anything to stay away from himself. This is why arrogance and insecurity always travel together. Arrogance is not strength. It is armor. It is loud because it is hollow. It needs constant reinforcement because it has no foundation. Wisdom, on the other hand, is quiet. It does not rush to speak. It listens. It adjusts. It evolves. Pay attention to how he handles mistakes, not others' mistakes, his own. Does he take responsibility or redirect blame? Does he reflect or justify? Does he repair or rationalize? Growth lives in repair. Stagnation lives in justification. A man who has faced his shadow does not need to dominate. He does not need to intimidate. He does not need to appear flawless. He understands his capacity for harm and therefore chooses restraint. He understands his weaknesses and therefore stays curious. He understands his limits and therefore remains grounded. But a man who refuses his shadow is dangerous without intending to be. His unexamined pain leaks into his relationships. His suppressed anger surfaces as control. His denied fear becomes manipulation. His insecurity becomes authority. And everyone around him pays the cost. This is not about judging him. It is about recognizing patterns. You are not responsible for his healing. You cannot confront a shadow someone is committed to avoiding. Awareness is your responsibility. Distance is sometimes the only healthy response to denial. Wisdom does not shout, "I am wise." Strength does not announce itself. Light does not need to prove it is light. Arrogance needs applause. Control needs obedience. Fear needs agreement. Truth needs nothing. If you are around someone and you feel smaller for being honest, if your clarity feels threatening to them, if your questions are treated as rebellion, that is not leadership. That is a shadow defending itself. You are allowed to choose environments that support growth. You are allowed to step away from people who refuse self-examination. You are allowed to protect your peace without explaining yourself. Walking away is not weakness. Sometimes it is the clearest act of self-respect. When you understand this dynamic, something shifts. You stop internalizing blame that does not belong to you. You stop trying to fix what you did not break. You stop confusing dominance with depth. You stop mistaking certainty for wisdom. The shadow loses power the moment it is seen, not confronted aggressively, seen clearly. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The excuses stop working. The charm fades. The pattern reveals itself. Wisdom bends. Arrogance breaks. Wisdom grows quieter with time. Arrogance grows louder. Wisdom deepens. Arrogance stiffens. One can change. The other must control. Choose wisely who you follow. Choose carefully who you trust. And most importantly, choose to face your own shadow so you never need to hide behind someone else's power again. The hardest truth to accept is not that something went wrong. The hardest truth is that you already knew before the evidence showed up, before the words made sense, before logic caught up. Your body spoke first, your chest tightened, your thoughts slowed, your excitement faded. Something inside you whispered, slow down, and you kept going anyway. The body always knows. It does not need proof. It does not need explanations. It reacts to patterns before the mind can name them. That unease you felt was not weakness. That confusion was not insecurity. That loss of clarity was not failure. Those were signals, warnings, messages designed to protect you. But most people are taught to ignore those messages. They are taught to trust appearance over instinct, titles over truth, popularity over peace. When the man is respected, you tell yourself you must be wrong. When others admire him, you tell yourself you are overthinking. When walking away feels scary, you convince yourself to stay a little longer. That is how intuition gets silenced. Not by force, but by doubt. Not by fear, but by pressure. You start negotiating with your inner voice. You say, maybe it is just me. Maybe I am being dramatic. Maybe I should give it more time. And every time you ignore the signal, it gets quieter. Not because it was wrong, but because you stopped listening. Inner conflict is not random. It is not chaos. It is the psyche sending a message. This path costs too much of who you are. When you feel torn inside, it is often because one part of you wants peace and another part wants approval. One part wants alignment and another part wants safety. One part wants truth and another part wants comfort. Pay attention to what you lose in the process of staying. Do you lose sleep? Do you lose confidence? Do you lose joy? Do you lose your voice? The cost is not always obvious at first. It shows up slowly. You stop laughing the same. You stop trusting yourself. You stop feeling grounded. And you tell yourself it is temporary. People who leave manipulative or draining relationships often say something surprising. They say they felt relief before they felt clarity. They did not understand everything yet. They did not have all the answers, but their body relaxed. Their breathing changed. Their mind slowed down. That relief was not coincidence. It was confirmation. Peace is data. It is not laziness. It is not avoidance. It is information. When peace returns, it means something harmful has stopped. Discomfort is also information. It does not mean run immediately. It means pay attention. Ask why. Observe patterns. Honor what your system is telling you. The world will tell you to ignore your intuition if it disrupts the status quo. It will tell you to stay loyal even when loyalty costs your identity. It will tell you to respect authority even when authority lacks integrity. It will tell you to endure even when endurance turns into erosion. But intuition is not loud. It does not argue. It does not demand. It waits. It waits for you to choose yourself. It waits for you to stop explaining away what you feel. It waits for you to trust that you do not need permission to protect your inner world. Think about the moments when something felt off, the conversation that left you drained, the advice that confused you, the praise that felt heavy. Those moments were not accidents, they were checkpoints, opportunities to pause, opportunities to recalibrate, opportunities to ask, is this aligned with who I am becoming? You do not need to prove that your intuition is right to honor it. You do not need a dramatic ending to justify leaving. You do not need others to understand your decision. Your nervous system does not lie. It responds to reality even when the story looks good on the surface. Walking away feels frightening because the familiar feels safer than the unknown. Even when the familiar hurts, even when it limits you, even when it drains you, fear does not always mean danger ahead. Sometimes it means growth ahead. Sometimes it means you are about to reclaim something you gave away slowly. When you ignore intuition long enough, your body will find louder ways to speak. Exhaustion, anxiety, detachment, burnout. These are not flaws. They are alarms. They are the cost of staying in places that require you to betray yourself. Listening to intuition does not mean you will never make mistakes. It means you will stop making the same mistake repeatedly. It means you will stop confusing discomfort with destiny. It means you will stop waiting for permission to leave situations that no longer serve your growth. You are not disloyal for choosing yourself. You are not weak for needing peace. You are not wrong for sensing what others cannot see. Discernment often looks lonely before it looks wise. Clarity often arrives after courage. When you finally listen, something shifts. Your body exhales, your mind quiets, your energy returns. You may not have answers yet, but you have space. And space is where truth grows. Trust what your body told you before your mind tried to negotiate. Trust the signal you felt before the pressure to stay. Trust the version of yourself that noticed the cost early. That voice was not trying to sabotage you. It was trying to save you. The more you honor intuition, the stronger it becomes. The faster it speaks, the clearer it feels. And one day you will look back and realize the warning was always there. You were never lost. You were just learning to listen. This is where the story turns inward, because the truth is this moment was never about him. It was about you. It was about who you are becoming and what you are willing to protect. This encounter was not a mistake. It was not bad luck. It was not punishment. It was initiation. Life does not test the uncommitted. It tests those with purpose. It tests those with depth. It tests those who are ready to rise into a stronger version of themselves. Every person who is meant to grow reaches a crossroads, a moment where comfort and consciousness pull in opposite directions, a moment where staying feels easy but costly and leaving feels hard but honest. That is where discernment is born, not in theory. In action, not in intention, in choice. You do not mature by knowing better. You mature by choosing better. This is not about cutting someone off in anger. It is about integration. Integration means aligning your actions with your awareness. It means honoring what you have learned. It means no longer abandoning yourself to keep the peace. Distance is not betrayal when closeness requires self-erasure. Boundaries are not punishment when they protect your growth. Departure is not failure when staying would stunt your evolution. For a long time you may have believed strength meant endurance. That if you could just handle, more tolerate, more sacrifice, more, then you were doing the right thing. But endurance without alignment is not strength. It is survival. Real strength is choosing yourself even when it costs familiarity, even when it disappoints others, even when it forces you to stand alone for a season. When you refuse to give your power away, something changes immediately. You feel it in your body. Your shoulders relax. Your breath deepens. Your thoughts slow down. That is not coincidence. That is your system returning to balance. Power is not dominance. It is ownership. Ownership of your time. Ownership of your voice. Ownership of your direction. You start trusting yourself again, not in an abstract way, in real decisions. You stop checking for approval. You stop explaining your instincts away. You stop doubting the signals you feel. Trust grows through action. Every time you honor your inner knowing, it gets stronger. Every time you choose alignment over appeasement, it gets clearer. Your vision sharpens. When you are no longer distracted by managing someone else's expectations, you can finally see forward. The fog lifts, the noise quiets. You remember what mattered before you started shrinking. You reconnect with goals that felt distant. You feel hunger again. Not desperation, direction. Your path clears. Not because everything becomes easy, but because everything becomes honest. You stop wasting energy on confusion. You stop negotiating your values. You stop trying to make incompatible things fit. Clarity does not remove obstacles. It shows you which ones are worth climbing. This is what initiation looks like. Not a ceremony, not applause. A decision made quietly when no one is watching. A moment where you choose integrity over image, growth over guilt, truth over attachment. That is how character is built. Life will always present figures who test your discernment. Not to trap you, to refine you, not to break you, to wake you up. The warning was not meant to scare you. It was meant to interrupt the pattern. It was meant to force awareness. It was meant to push you out of autopilot. You were not chosen to stay asleep. You were chosen to become conscious. Conscious of your worth. Conscious of your limits. Conscious of the difference between loyalty and self-abandonment. Conscious of the cost of staying small. This moment asks the question, will you protect your becoming, or will you protect familiarity? Will you honor what you know, or will you silence it for comfort? Will you step into responsibility for your life, or will you hand it back to someone else? When you choose yourself, you do not become selfish. You become grounded. You become stable. You become capable of real connection instead of dependency. You cannot build a meaningful life on borrowed authority. You cannot fulfill your purpose while outsourcing your power. Integration means you take what you learned and move forward differently. You do not repeat the pattern. You do not romanticize the past. You do not demonize it either. You extract the lesson and apply it. That is maturity. You will notice something unexpected. As you step into your power, you do not feel loud. You feel calm. You do not feel aggressive. You feel clear. You do not feel rushed. You feel steady. That steadiness is evidence that you chose correctly. This is not the end of something. It is the beginning of alignment. The beginning of self-trust. The beginning of walking your path without apology. You did not lose anything that was meant for you. You released what could not come with you. You are not behind. You are right on time. Initiation does not announce itself. It reveals itself later when you look back and realize that was the moment you stopped giving your life away in pieces. The test was never about him. It was about whether you would rise to meet yourself. Be careful, but not afraid. Alert, but not paranoid. Open, but not unguarded. Not every man who speaks of truth lives it. Not every guide is meant to stay. Your task is not to save him, expose him, or fight him. Your task is to choose consciousness over confusion. And when you do, you will realize the warning was never about danger alone. It was about becoming who you were always meant to be.